On today's episode of Locked On Wild, as we move towards the end of March, we usually look for signs of spring. But in this case, we're looking for signs of life from the Minnesota Wild.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll take a look at what has led to the Minnesota Wild winning 3 in a row. And there are some noticeable differences that have led to the Wild being able to get back in the win column to finish out their homestand. We'll take a look at some notable players starting to step up, as well as a re-emphasis on a key point on offense. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, and after a full day of travel today, we are back in Locked On Wild HQ. And I will just mention for everybody again, today was the end of the winter sports season for me, which means that we are going to get as many postcasts in as we can the rest of the season. Obviously, a handful of games left. So we're going to get as many postcasts as we can in starting Monday. And I've got a plan for postcasts for next year that I think will work for everybody. So stay tuned in that regard. The Wild have won 3 games in a row after looking like things were trending in a dicey direction. The Wilds have finally started to get some things put together. And now, as we look at the wild card standings, the Wilds currently have 85 points and have given themselves a 6-point cushion over the St. Louis Blues, but an 8-point cushion over the Calgary Flames with 12 games to play. So it is looking as though the Wild have done enough to be able to get themselves into the postseason. It's going to take a Herculean effort because Calgary, think about it this way. Calgary has to do 8 points better than the Minnesota Wild the rest of the way, which means that Calgary has to win 4 more games than the Wild in a 13-game stretch. So you're talking like you got to probably, in 13 games, you've got to probably go 12-1 in order to get in if you're the Flames, and you got to hope that the Minnesota Wild go like 7-5, 6-6, something like that. Now, the Calgary Flames have won 3 in a row, but they're just 5-2-3 in their last 10. So it's looking more and more like the Wilds are going to be able to keep that one of those wild card spots. But what are the reasons that they have been able to win the last 3 games, beating the Kings 3-1 on the 17th, beating the Kraken 4-0 on the 19th, and then beating the Sabres 4-1 today? Well, I'd like to start with one key area that was sorely lacking for the Minnesota Wild over the last several games. How about a rededication to getting in close and scoring in close and trying to get to the net as much as possible? Look at that game against the Seattle Kraken in particular in that regard. The Minnesota Wild had 3 quick goals in succession that were from the faceoff circles and in. So the closer you get to the goalie, the easier time you have scoring, especially if you can get full power on the shot. And I think about that goal that Ryan Hartman scored against the Kraken, where he was able to really let one fly from between the face-off circles. That's hard for a goalie to stop when you can get full power on a shot from that far in close. Obviously, Matt Boldy scored one of those as well. You had Liam Ohgren in that game, and the Wild have also had Mats Zuccarello start to get back on the score sheet. They've had plenty of people that have really started to get themselves back on the score sheet, and it, I think, stems from being able to get in close. The Wild had 2 medium danger goals and 1 high danger goal against the Sabres today. They also had a rebound goal against the Wild. Had a rebound goal off of an initial shot. So what does that tell you? That is all in close. Those are all shots that are in close, and the Wild are doing a much better job of just mixing up those chances and working it in deep. So they had 30 unblocked shot attempts, not a ton against the Sabres, but 30 unblocked shot attempts. 20 of them were low danger, but then 8 were medium danger and 2 were high danger. So a third of their attempts were medium and in. That's a ratio that you want to have. If we go back to the game against the Seattle Kraken, the Minnesota Wild had 25. They had 38 total shot attempts. They had 11 medium danger and 2 high danger. The Wild also had 2 medium danger goals against the Seattle Kraken. So that is 4 medium and a high danger over the course of those 2 games. And then if we backpedal to the game against the Los Angeles Kings to just finish off the tail of the tape, we see a similar level of success. And look, I know Philip Grubauer not having a great season, obviously, to the point that he was sent down. He was put on waivers. Now he's back. But let's keep in mind as well that we've seen examples this year of the Minnesota Wild not challenging a goalie enough vis-a-vis UC Saros. Or not UC Saros, Tristan Jarry for the Penguins, who had been playing in the minors like a couple weeks before the game. And the Wild just didn't challenge him enough. And so now you see some of these results against these goalies, and the Wild are getting their opportunities and they're getting their chances against. So against the Kings, the Minnesota Wild had 34 unblocked shot attempts. They had 28 low danger, 4 medium, and 2 high. They scored a low danger goal and a medium danger goal against Darcy Kemper. Now, the Kings game was the first game of the mix. So obviously we've seen the medium and the high danger attempts. We've seen that ratio improve over the last couple of games, but that means that over the last 3 games, the Minnesota Wild have had 5 medium danger goals. They've had a couple of high danger goals as well. And that is the tail of the tape, that the Wild are doing a much better job of getting in close and scoring from in close, which is why over these last 3 games, they've scored 11 goals. And that has helped key this offense kind of blooming out of the snow a little bit. We're going to go heavy on spring puns today. It's not like we're not in full bloom, but there have been some signs of life, and we've talked about it quite a bit. Everydayers that listen to this show know that the easiest way to break out of a slump is to get to the bleeping net. Get to the net and try to score in close, because it's much harder for goalies to make those saves. So the Wild have done that over the course of these last 3 games, which has certainly helped them win those 3 in a row. Now, there have been plenty of other things, one of which is we just have seen some players that needed to get back on track do so. So we'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day, and it will be back to a normal schedule for you come Monday. Obviously, we'll have our regular episode with Alex Micheletti for you on Monday, gearing up for a big matchup against the Dallas Stars Monday night. Also, don't miss the live show tomorrow at noon, as Denny is going to lay out his concerns about the Minnesota Wild at this point in the season. You are not going to want to miss that one. We'll also have a poll for you on YouTube to answer as to whether or not you think it is time for Bill Guerin to step aside for Judd Brackett. So make sure to go answer that as well on the YouTube community page. And again, we'll see you tomorrow at noon. So 11 goals for the Minnesota Wild in the last 3 games. And there have been 8 different players that have scored said goals. Matt Boldy, Mats Zuccarello, Ryan Hartman have all scored. Freddie Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson, Justin Brazeau getting on the score sheet, Marco Rossi, and Liam Ohgren. So we are seeing twofold here with the goal scoring department. We're seeing a variety of players that have stepped up to help, but we have seen a return to form for the guys that have been needing to lead the way. Marco Rossi scored his first goal in quite some time against the Sabres today. That got him up to 22 goals on the year. And it was Rossi's first goal in the month of March, which is not a great number, but it was Rossi's first goal since February 25th, a span of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. His first goal in 11 games for the Minnesota Wild. Both him and now Matt Boldy having scored twice in the last 3 games and having points in back-to-back games as well. We've seen those guys start to kind of come out of it. And I talked about this in yesterday's episode, that it just seems like there was equal parts, maybe not doing enough or being kind of falling victim to the pressure that there was to perform with nobody else doing anything for this team. So I think certainly kind of caving to the pressure was part of it. But I think both of those guys in particular were just a little bit snake bit over the last month or so. Just not hitting shots at the same level, not getting goals at the same level. There were plenty of unlucky bounces in that mix as well. But not only are they starting to kind of pull their way out of this, Mats Zuccarello has 2 goals in the last 3 games. He's got 4 goals in the month of March. So he's starting to kind of find some signs and show some signs of bloom for that top line. And that is the line that you're going to need to click here down the stretch if the Wild are going to make some moves and do anything in the postseason. Having Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson back would go a long way, but until we get a concrete timetable there, you got to kind of go with what you got. And getting Zuccarello, Boldy, and Rossi going is going to be a big key to that for the Minnesota Wild. But not only that, like, just look at the different lines that have contributed here over the last few games. We'll go to the Kings game. Ryan Hartman with a goal from the third line. Marcus Johansson with the goal from the second line. Mats Zuccarello with the goal from the top line. Now, Zuccarello's goal was on the power play, as was Ryan Hartman's, but still, you're getting contributions from those players up and down the lineup. Matt Boldy, 2 goals for the top line. You had Ryan Hartman scoring once again for the third line. Liam Ohgren scoring once again, scoring his first goal of the season. So you're getting contributions up and down the lineup, and then Brazo on the fourth line, Gaudreau on the second line, Rossi on the top line, Zuccarello on the top line. Depth of scoring. And if you can get a little more of that, that helps take pressure off that top line. That helps take pressure off of the main goal scorers by them not having to be the only ones getting it done. So if you can get a couple of lines, we've talked about this all season, if you can get a couple of lines to score, that is going to go a long way for you as the season unfolds. And if we look at the combinations, the Boldy, Rossi, Zuccarello line, they had a 9-3 shots on goal advantage in their 11 minutes together. Also the 1 goal for and none against. You look at the Johansson, Gaudreau, Nyquist line. They also had a shot advantage of 2-1 in their minutes on the ice. They had a very small expected goals against, not a great expected goals for, but just the point that I'm trying to make here is multiple lines that can give the threat, multiple lines that can give the threat of scoring. So teams don't just stack the box against your top line and say, well, this is the only line that we have to worry about. So if we stop them, we stop the Wild. So getting scoring up and down the lineup is great, but just getting players going is the big thing at this point in the season. I mean, if you look at the statistics from the time that Kirill Kaprizov was out of the lineup, which was the end of January, I believe the actual date was the 27th. So if you go from the 27th to now, your leading goal scorer is still Freddie Gaudreau, who has 7 goals in 20 games. Matt Boldy was sitting on 5 goals. Marco Rossi's on 5 goals. Matt Zuccarello's on 5 goals. You got to get those guys going. Get those 3 going. It's great that Freddie is contributing as one of those secondary scorers. It is great that he's doing that, but it should be the top guys that are leading with those other players following suit. So depth of scoring, a key for this team. And another thing that has kind of shown some signs of life here over the last few games. But the one that I want to finish on here today is, of course, just a fantastic 3-game stretch for Filip Gustavsson. He is really starting to kind of pull himself back in, and the numbers have been just sensational here over his last handful of starts. So we'll talk about that to finish up here on today's episode of Locked On Wild. That's coming up right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings time snuck up on us yet again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in around to golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. How about somebody who is notoriously a night owl that now works during the day? I am not going to lie. I kind of hit the wall around 12:30, 1 o'clock every day. So if it's a day where I don't have anything going on, you're getting a nap in. But if there is something on the schedule, and especially as the weather gets nice, going to need a little boost to get through the afternoon, whether it be a round of golf or even just afternoon meetings. 5 Hour Energy can give you that little jolt to keep you awake and keep you in the game. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12 or 24 pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, a reminder, noon tomorrow on YouTube. Denny is ready to rock with his latest live show, looking at the need for some changes for this Minnesota Wild team. So make sure to tune in. You are not going to want to miss that coming up at noon. Let's talk a little bit about Filip Gustavsson. Jonas Brodin returned to the lineup today, and you would never know that he was out of the lineup at all. Played 20 minutes, had an assist, did have a penalty, but was a +1 out there on the ice. And his return was able to shed 3 minutes off of Brock Faber's standard ice time. He only played 23 minutes, 55 seconds in today's game. But Filip Gustavsson, I mean, the last 3 games especially, he has been fantastic. The numbers from the last 3 games in particular, he is 3-0. He stopped 82 of total 84 shots, which equates out to a .976 save percentage and a .67 goals against average. He has 1 shutout. He's 3-0. But even if you back it up to the month of March, Filip Gustavsson is 6-2-1 in the month of March with a 1.65 goals against average, a .941 save percentage, and has 2 shutouts in that span. And Filip Gustavsson has certainly had a whale share of the starts here this year, as it was widely expected, that he was going to be the 1A this year, and that Marc-Andre Fleury was going to be the backup. He started 48 games thus far and is on pace to start 56 of the games this year. Now, his overall numbers, a 2.51 goals against average and a .917 save percentage. But there have been some bumps in the road for Filip Gustavsson, to say the least. I mean, you look at the month of January and February, a 3.53 goals against average in January, a 3.44 goals against average in the month of February, although, to be honest, that was mostly inflated by that loss against the Ottawa Senators, 6-0, in which Gus was in net for all 6 goals, as the Wild just wilted in that game. January was the bad one. But beyond that, Gus has been his noted spectacular self. Has not had any other months other than January and February. Has not had any other months with a goal against average above 3 and a save percentage below 90. So we have seen a nice return to form for Filip Gustavsson this year. And with the schedule ramping up as it is going to come next week, having Filip Gustavsson red hot and ready to rock, that's going to do the Wild a lot of good because they are certainly going to need some good goaltending for these games in order to go up against these contending teams that they're going to play over the next week. I mean, look at this upcoming schedule for the Minnesota Wild. Monday, they play Dallas on the road. So they're at Dallas Monday. They host the Vegas Golden Knights on Tuesday. Then they play Washington on Thursday. And then on Saturday, they host the New Jersey Devils at 5 o'clock, while then playing the Devils on the road on March 31st. And then going on the road at New York at the Rangers. And then Friday, April 4th, they're at the Islanders. So a tough stretch as we navigate down to the final 12. The final 12 games of the 2024-2025 season. And what I'll finish with is this. It's nice to have beaten teams like Seattle and Buffalo. Now, the Los Angeles Kings are a very good team. So that stands as a very good win against the Los Angeles Kings. Now, I'm not trying to diminish the games against Seattle and Buffalo, but there's a clear difference in standings points between Seattle and Buffalo and Dallas and Vegas. Dallas and Vegas are the teams that are in the postseason. Seattle and Buffalo are the teams that you should beat. The Wild did, so I'll give them credit there. But here's the thing. This is going to be a really good test. This week is going to be a really good test to see if the Minnesota Wild can continue to build off of these things that have led to these last 3 wins. Can they continue to attack in close? Can they continue to pull players out of varying levels of slumps? If they can continue to do that and they can start to get some semblance of consistent offense, strong goaltending, timely special teams, the Wild penalty kill is 13 for their last 14. The power play over these last 3 games has been just under 30%. It's a small sample size, but can you build on that and push that forward in these upcoming games, which are going to be very tough? But if you can win those games, you further solidify yourself in the postseason picture. And, then you're not having to sweat down the stretch, having to play Calgary and Vancouver on the road on back-to-back nights in the third and second to last games of the season. So it's going to be a little tricky, just like the weather is in March. We see signs of bloom. We see the snow starting to melt. Is it going to continue, or are we in store for another snowstorm here before we finally do get to the warmth? Beyond that, only other thing that I wanted to add in was just on Liam Ohgren. It was great to see him score in the game against the Kraken, but obviously he was recalled under emergency circumstances. So the fact that he was an emergency call-up meant that he could only play if one of the non-Marcus Foligno forwards was out of the lineup. Marcus Johansson did not play in the Kraken game, so obviously Ohgren was able to get in. But with Johansson playing today, that meant that Ohgren's mission was accomplished, and that he promptly ended up getting sent down to Iowa. So I wouldn't look too far into that. It's not as though the Minnesota Wilds called him up and just had him sit on the bench for an extended stretch before then sending him back down because you didn't want to take a particular defenseman out of the lineup due to the service time that he has put in for this Minnesota Wild roster. More on that on Monday. That's a tease. But we will have an episode for you coming up on Monday with Alex Micheletti to recap the weekend for the Minnesota Wild, and we'll dive into the latest on the Marco Rossi contract situation. Yeah, there's a lot to digest there. But do make sure to join us tomorrow at noon. Denny has a whole slate planned and ready for you. Should be very exciting. So make sure to join us at noon, and make sure to answer the poll in the community tab while you are watching this. Denny wants to see what the response is to his poll question as well. But that'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we appreciate you tuning into Locked On Wild here and making us part of your daily routine. Make sure to join us come Monday for a new episode and tomorrow for our latest live stream, so you don't miss out on any new episodes here throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.